welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and thank you for joining us here on the program. We're here on Sundays, Mondays, Wednesdays, or any day of the week, any time of the day, 24/7, 365, because we're also podcasting and videocasting these programs. I'll tell you where a little later on in the program. But right now, we're going to jump right into our conversation with our very special guest who is joining us all the way from, well, it used to be Hawaii, but now it's Los Angeles. Esra, oh God, I want to thank you so much for being with us. I am really looking forward to our conversation.
Oh, thank you so much, Richard. I'm really looking forward to it too.
Yeah, the title of the book that you and your husband Ike have written, it's a new book. Actually, I guess this one is by you predominantly. Money does grow on trees. The myths we create and live by. I find that so appropriate. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who in this land is the fairest of all? Sounds an awful lot like a fairy tale, but then again, of course, fairness, being fair, has more to do with an appearance in this context, in that context. But also, who is the wealthiest one of all? No, it's not Jeff Bezos or Richard Branson, although I do like his first name, or any of the Elon Musk or whoever else you want to list. I would not consider them necessarily to be the wealthiest, one of the wealthiest people. I would consider myself, maybe even you, Ezra, and your husband Ike, because you're not measuring wealth. You're not measuring that by the amount of digits before the decimal point, are you?
No, not at all. It's really interesting how little, in that sense, richness has to do with the actual money amounts we have in the bank. I believe true prosperity comes as an inside out job. And I'm one of those people who, by following that path, was able to manifest, but it wasn't first predominantly the money. It was just deciding to feel rich before anything else in my life moved. And the more I could be grateful for things, the more I felt rich, the more I could see how my mind was limiting me from certain things I wanted to experience in life, how both the having or the not having had to do so much with myself and my thought patterns. That to me was the wow richness and the treasure out of which much more wealth was born in every direction in the world, whether it was a relationship, whether it was having so much more fun in life, whether it was feeling better about myself, or whether it was about money.
Hmm. Well, we've also been sold a bill of goods, myths, as was just previously mentioned, such as we have less because others have more, or if we are materialistic, we can't be spiritual. The rich are the root of all evil. Actually, the actual passage from the New Testament is money is the root of all evil. That's at least that's the quote, but still a myth. If we are not successful, we are not worthy. And only this way works. And money doesn't grow on trees, which I always found funny because money's made of paper. Most money is made of paper, and it does grow on trees.
I love it. I'm so glad you caught that one.
Yeah,
That was a part of like the title. It is actually really, we do collect it from the trees, like physically speaking. Nice.
we really do. We really do. Manifesting beliefs and the universe and so forth. It's what I find fascinating is that you and your husband talk about beliefs, manifesting, and universe. You have a podcast, Unique. That's Younique. You, as in you personal. Unique is the name of the podcast. Let's talk a little bit more about this aspect of the myths. Now, I'll share with you something that I found interesting years ago. And this was a perspective of mine at the time. I've since modified it. I've often felt that we have this dichotomy of philosophies. On the one hand, you had in the late 19th and early 20th centuries a myriad of people coming from other places around the world through Ellis Island, and the phrase on the tip of their tongue was that this is the land of opportunity. And they took advantage of it, rightly so. And today, many of them have established and continue to maintain maybe major corporations, global conglomerates that grew out of just a small little mom and pop store on the corner of who knows where, let's just say in New York City. And they took advantage of that. Now, that's one perspective. Then there's the other side of that coin, or the paradox, the dichotomy, where you have a government and you have a particular group of people in a particular party who basically they want those who have made these conglomerates who are worth billions. They want them to pay a heck of a lot more percentage wise in taxes to help offset the group of people in this country who don't make a lot of money and are barely eking out a living. So they're going to increase the taxation. So up to a certain point, you're going to be at a much lower tax rate. But if you bump up over the top of that, boom, you're going to be hit. And so then the question is, do I really want to be a millionaire, billionaire, trillionaire? Because I'm not going to get to keep it all. I mean, I worked hard for this. Let's just set aside the whole inheritance thing. I worked hard. My family, my ancestors worked hard to build this, and I want to continue this. But the government's going to take it away. So, again, it's like, what's the point? What is the point? So you have those kind of diametrically opposed concepts. And and obviously one is an attitude of lack, and the other is an attitude of abundance. Do we ignore, in a manner of speaking, the latter philosophy, the attitude of lack concept of what's the point? Why should I do this? Why should I even strive to be a millionaire, a billionaire, and being able to help people with this money or do the things that I'd like to do? So talk to
Yeah.
us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, definitely it's not a system that predominantly, motivates people to go out there and make more and to be the best they can be and to be even more productive. Because, yeah, if the more you have, the more someone's interested in taking what you have, on a very regular level, it's not going to be very motivating. But when you look at it from the co-creation perspective, I remember this other teacher, Abraham, when some man was complaining about how after every marriage, he's like married 3 or 4 different women, each wife is taking 50% away, and he's complaining about it. And Abraham says something great and says, well, haven't you made more and more the more they took and took from you? And he's like, well, actually, yeah, I did become richer because, and, he thinks about it for a second, and each one taking kind of like motivated him to kind of, manifest more. So as a system, I don't find it a very fair system. I pay a high level of taxation in this country, and sometimes it does make me think, because I have the freedom to live anywhere I want, like, should I just keep staying in the States? And I don't know if the taxes were to go up, if I would, choose to stay. But I think one really important thing to understand, and it's hard in these times of turmoil that we're going through as a humanity, not just in the US, but in the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
The worst poverty and the worst lack that we can shoot our own selves in the foot with is a kind of a feeling victimized. feeling the sense of, oh, I'm like this, or I can't make more. It's because of the government. It's because of the taxes. It's because, people are choosing not to work, or whatever the situation might be. I have found in my life, and I used to be kind of a queen of that victim type of psychology, that once you snap out of it and you can, develop this inner state of the winner's attitude, where whatever happens to you, you can look at it in two ways. You can look at it like, okay, you know what, I'm going to lose, or you know what, I'm going to like win out of this. How can I be a winner? How can I make the most of this contrast? How can I get this horrible thing that's happening to me, turn it around and get it to serve me? Because also contrast, when we get limited, when we get pushed upon, even if it's, so-called unfairness, we have an opportunity of what we call, to make a new being choice, decide to kind of move above our previous limitations. So that contrast can make you jump like crazy, or if you choose to be a victim and sit and complain and, feel like, oh, this is happening to me because of, X, Y, and Z, then we just, keep just complaining and nothing gets any better.
We're talking with Esra Ogut, author of Money Does Grow on Trees, here on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank you so much for joining us as we continue our conversation. One of the things that I find so very, very interesting is the conversations that I have with people in regards to this whole conversation about money. But actually, I'm going to broaden that, about abundance, about prosperity, about wealth, and I'm going to throw into the mix about happiness.
Mm.
And many, many people equate accumulation of the aforementioned with happiness, when in fact we have seen time and time again in reality, not in movies and television, but in reality, that it doesn't. They are unsatisfied. They are incomplete within themselves, and they usually don't recognize it until they've reached their latter years, which is rather interesting. I'd love your perspective on a story that I remember hearing in regards to money and prosperity, abundance. I'll tell you the story. I could tell you my story as I was growing up in this business back in the early 80s. But this particular story has to do with two gentlemen. They get together pretty regularly for meals, and they converse, and they're good friends, and they have that camaraderie, community, etc., etc. So they get together for breakfast one Thursday, and they're sitting there and having a great time, chatting away about whatever it is that they talk about. And the bill comes. And the one gentleman, we'll call him Bill. The check comes, and Bill picks up the check, and he reaches into his pocket, and he pulls out exact change, exact amount of the bill, of the check. And they leave, and of course his friend George, we'll call him George, he's thankful. Hey, thank you so much. It was great. I had a great time. The following week they get together for lunch. And then great conversation, great meal, great food, and so forth. And the check comes, and Bill, once again, he picks up the tab, pulls out of his pocket the exact amount needed, and they move on. And then about a week to 10 days later, they get together for a dinner. Same scenario, wonderful meal, wonderful conversation, just really, really, the whole bonding thing is just going well and having a great time. And the check comes. Once again, Bill takes the check, pulls out from his pocket the exact amount. George is just beside himself. He's just perplexed. He says, I don't understand. How is this even possible that you know exactly how much it's going to be? Have you got some deal going on with these restaurants that we go to? Is a secret that I don't know about? Said, no. Well, what's the deal? So Bill says, well, let me tell you the story. He says, I found this lamp And I rubbed this lamp, and this genie came out of the lamp. And he says, "You have one wish." One wish. And I thought about it for a long time. Says, "Can I get back to you?" Sure. You'll only get one wish, but, you know, you can sure get back to me whenever you'd like. So for about a week, Bill thinks about it and finally comes back to the genie. Okay. Now, of course, he could have wished for $1 million. He could have wished for a yacht, a plane, a myriad of other things. He says, I wish for, I wish to have exactly the amount of money I need to pay for the things that I need and want in my life. And Bill is not a greedy, hoarding kind of guy. Very down to earth, very practical. So he's not going to go nuts. And your wish is my command, and that is how I happen to have exactly what I need every time I go to pay for something. Now, is that anything along the lines of the philosophy that you are speaking of when you talk about money grows on trees and this aspect of abundance, prosperity, and so forth?
Let me ask you a question back.
Uh-oh.
Imagine that I say, oh, I only want the amount of oxygen that I need just to function.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say?
I guess I would actually have to think about that, because if I only have the amount of oxygen that I need, then I have what I need to survive. I mean, how would I use extra? Where would I put it?
Well, when you do allow to breathe deeper, you don't just survive, you also have more vitality. But the thing is, we don't think of oxygen as like, oh my God, if I breathe more, then others will have less. Because we
Mm-hmm.
know it's like plenty abundant. Like just because we're breathing deeply, the oxygen isn't going away anywhere. So I believe abundance is the same. Now, greed is a very different energy, of course. You know, greed is very, very different. But I think people often make the mistake by, by wanting and trying not to be greedy, they also can self-limit. Because that's a belief system too. If I
Mm-hmm.
have too much, I'm doing something wrong. If I have too much, there's no like too much. It's just a matter of how much, we're allowing. And if we're doing this in an aligned way, if we're already feeling prosperous, just like oxygen, if we're allowing ourselves to breathe, then more prosperity just shows up naturally, because we're getting great ideas, or we're being productive. We're putting stuff on the table that people are interested in, or it doesn't just have to be from what we're creating, it just flows.
Mm-hmm.
But we put so many twisted stories onto money, such as the one you mentioned at the beginning of your conversation. Yes, there's a lot of people who equate having a lot of money with happiness, and the two have nothing to do with each other.
Mm-hmm.
But by the same token, there's a lot of people who equate unhappiness with money as well.
Oh yeah. Oh,
and the two has nothing to do with each other either.
Right.
Because a choice to be prosperous, or a being choice to belong to prosperity, is a different choice. A being choice to be one who's happy in life is a totally different choice. So the two can be, coexisting in the same person, or it might not.
Mm.
I know the point in my life where I was like miserable, and at one point, especially when I started understanding this stuff more, I made a being choice to be a happy person. And that was before even the money came in. And once I made that being choice, which is a very deep inner, like almost like on a soul level, cellular level choice to what it is that we're going to belong, the mirror of life immediately begins to show that back to us.
Well, I will tell you that as I started growing in this business back 40 years ago plus, I was confronted with a philosophy, a myth, okay, especially by some of my coworkers. Even though I hired them, we were coworkers. I was their supervisor, but still, we all did the same job. And you'd get the response every once in a while when asking someone to do a task, you guys don't pay me enough to do that. To which I would respond, excuse me, but when we hired you, we gave you the list of the job
Yeah.
description. So this is not a surprise, okay? And even more importantly, and my best friend told me this one. He used this when he was had his people that he was supervising. I clean the toilets, okay? And if I, your supervisor, your coworker, can clean the toilets, so can you. This has nothing to do with how much you're being paid, all right? But the philosophy that I really had to struggle with was my boss's philosophy at this one station, where he lived by the law of diminishing returns. In other words, don't put out any more than you expect to get back.
Mm.
And I just couldn't do that. I can't even to this day. And a lot of people would tell me, Richard, how much are you charging so and so to do that production? You're undercharging yourself. You should charge more. Well, I had an awareness of how much money these people had. And I thought I would rather get the small amount and do the work and get the experience and make the connection and so forth than price myself out of the market and get nothing. I wouldn't get any money. I wouldn't get any experience. I wouldn't get an opportunity to work with this person, et cetera, et cetera. And so now I certainly charge a whole lot more than I used to 4 years ago. But still, some people say I'm still undercharging. And it's like, well, yeah, but I guess it's because I'm not trying to do this for the big people who certainly would have the money to pay $500 an hour or something like that. I still want to help those people who are working their way up, if you will. So how those are two interesting mindsets. I think that's really what they are, is mindsets that we struggle against, if you will. And that is number one, of course, they don't pay me enough to do this extra stuff. And number two is the law of diminishing returns. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The very first one was a big lesson for me too, because just like your experience, I remember when I first started hiring assistants in my life, I would ask them how much they wanted to get paid. And then I would give them the exact amount that they chose and, so worthy to get. And then after a while, I'd have the same problem as you're experiencing. Or, you mentioned experiencing where, okay, we made this agreement. I'm giving you exactly the amount of, money that you asked for. And now I want my goodies and what needs to be done in return in an equal manner. And I would have problems being able to get it. And I had this pattern maybe 2-3 times. And then when I was coaching with my mentor, he, really awoke me to something amazing. He goes, when you're hiring people, you have to really watch out. Don't ever hire necessarily the person you like. You got to test and see if a person in their mindset is a giver or a taker. If a person is a taker, do not hire. If a person is a giver, then do hire, which means that they have the mindset where they actually want to do something for you. Those are the givers. And because the exchange is the money that they're getting in return. So even when you're doing an interview, from the questions that people ask, you can understand and detect if a person is a giver or a taker. Also, this whole understanding of being a giver, where to put something of value, to put something beautiful on the table, to really care about what the other person is receiving, which is again the mindset of a giver, I think is extremely, extremely important for success in business. This time around, especially after the COVID and everything, I'm really kind of watching it in America. And it's like, it's really, really surprising me how many companies have kind of, turned into takers, where they really kind of, don't mind getting a lot of your money, and they're not that interested in giving you the best service. Even with just the moving company I had from Hawaii. I mean, it's like, it's crazy what they're charging. They didn't show up for 7 days.
Oh, geez.
you know. So it's a company that's a taker, and sure enough, when you go to the reviews, they have horrible reviews, and probably that limits their success a lot more than what it could actually be, because they're not understanding that they're just so in the survival mode that they're takers as a company.
Yeah.
So that's very important. The other thing about the diminishing, returns, I think, my teacher really taught me, it looks like a tough state of mind to have, but never, never to make another person's problem with money be your problem with money. He was very against helping people in that sense financially. Even when me and my husband, we were so broke, when we first started with him, that were having a hard time paying for rent. I remember, I mean, he was, a billionaire as a businessman and a mentor and a life coach, but, he kind of did that as a on the side, like a hobby. And my husband asked our teacher, our mentor, for $5,000 because we were going to get kicked out of the house. And he is something, he could have easily helped us with, easily given to us, but he said, no, I'm not going to do that. But hey, I do have a website I need to have done, and I know you're really, really good with websites. How about, you charge me $5,000 for this website? I know the going rate of a website. And then all of a sudden, that was the moment my husband's whole relationship with prosperity changed. He didn't help my husband. He didn't kind of buy into the victim story of like, oh, I don't have, can you please, help me? But by providing him a business, something that he can do, some value he can put on the table, what happened is Ike's sense of self-worth went up. And with that, his sense of prosperity went up.
Mm.
So that's how I would like to, approach that. I don't think in terms of what we should charge. I never think even our customers should decide what we charge. Other people should never tell us what we should charge. That what we charge for something is our own relationship of our own sense of self-worth to the money that we're making. And that can only be a relationship of authority inside our own selves. Because you know what? If I'm too expensive for you, then we're not a right match. Then you go to somebody else.
Mm.
So it's more like, and that changes in time with our
Mm-hmm.
consciousness,
Yeah.
you know and it's like, oh, is something too expensive, is something too cheap? Well, that's also very relative, because $500 is a lot of money for some people and it's absolutely no money for another person. So
Mhm.
whose reality are we talking about?
Yeah. Ezra Ogut is my guest. Money Does Grow on Trees is the title of the book. IkeandEzraNow.com is the website, and you're listening to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true here on the program that hopefully gives you some information, some new information that you maybe haven't heard before. Maybe you have, but you kind of said, well, we're going to bring it to you again, and we hope that you do. I want to ask you, Ezra, what about this philosophy? And I will put it in the category of myth for the moment.
Okay.
I trust the universe to provide what I need. I trust the universe, and then there's another one that says, if you do what you love, the money will follow.
Hmm. Well, if you do what you love, the money will theoretically flow, because you're basically functioning from a higher frequency. When you are doing anything you do in a state of love, as opposed to like, oh, I have to, but I don't want to. Yes, theoretically. But again, what belief systems, like a computer programming, do we have inside of us? If as a child, let's say, we've been taught, oh, you can't have money doing what you love, then it's not necessarily going to work, because we have a limiting belief system, a limiting programming that we've bought into or that we've created. That's not going to make that journey pan out, let's say, the same way as it would to somebody else. We're a great believer of doing. I mean, I would say the number one success of our company is, like, early on, we decided with my husband, no matter what the money was, no matter what the opportunity was, If we loved it, we would do it. If it didn't excite us, no matter what it was, we would say no.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's not just that simple, because yes, that is a very right theory, I think, because of how the frequencies work.
Mm-hmm.
But again, what are the belief systems behind that are in your unconscious mind that are setting up your reality? If you've been punished every time you were having fun as a child, or if, let's say, you weren't allowed to play until you had, you performed perfectly at school, well, then you're going to be walking around with a belief system that's going to, interfere with or limit you from doing what you love. For example, one very common belief system, I don't know how much they have it in the US, but in Turkey it's a very common one. We were always brought up like, oh, artists are always hungry. If you're an artist, you'll never make any money. So if you've, growing up, bought into that and put that into, your basket of your system, if you carry that as your programming, then off you go, and you're going to be a painter, and maybe you're going to be an amazing painter, an amazing artist. Everyone's going to love you, but it's possible that you still have no money. I
Mm-hmm.
worked with a client like that, where she was creating jewelry, a brand, and we started at the very beginning. She's now all over the world, and back then she's like, oh, I don't even know if they're going to understand it. And she combines very high-end jewelry with like concepts of spirituality. Anyway, so we started, she ended up being very successful, but she had like serious limitations around prosperity, which she kind of chose not to go there or break them, because she just wasn't interested in money. So there you go. You have a person that's like worldwide known, selling jewelry, I don't know in how many countries, and she's still having financial problems.
Mm.
So also success and wealth don't necessarily go together. Whatever her belief systems around money, she's choosing not to let the prosperity in. So she has high level of success, but limited amounts of money.
We're talking with Esra Ogut, and money does grow on trees because, for the most part, money is made of paper. We'll hope you get that one. And we are going to continue talking with her here on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And I'm curious about my father said to me many years ago, Richard, find a job you love doing because you're going to be doing it for a long time. Don't get stuck like me. Now, I think this was before he went back to junior college in the 70s, and he got his computer programming degree, where he was able to then transfer to another company because the company he was working for many years decided they were moving the plant to Utah, and he did not want to move the family to Utah. I don't know if I've lived under a lucky star, if I've got the right numbers in my birth date, if the right cards were pulled. I honestly don't know. All I know is that I have been very fortunate that I have been in almost every job I have ever had. And I'm going to retract that. Every job I have ever had, I have learned something that's taken me to the next level. And broadcasting has been the predominant career. My very first job, of course, was mowing lawns in the neighborhood. And I actually enjoyed that because there was a satisfaction that I felt in cutting the grass down, and I could watch the progression of the lawn as it was transformed from this hairy weed infested place to this nice smooth, almost like a golf course looking thing. And I love doing that. Paperboy. I will tell you that if that job was still available today and I could make enough money to survive, I'd go back to that because I loved meeting the people that I got to meet. On top of the fact that you kind of got to call your own hours. It was great. But broadcasting is great fun, and doing what I'm doing here, talking with you about the ideas you have. But I've been perplexed by, and I use this analogy, the fact that I have this massive toolbox filled with all of these tools, and I don't have 5 or 6 numbers before the decimal point in my bank account. And there are times when I ask myself, what am I not doing or what am I doing wrong that I can't seem to. I mean, I'm having fun. Don't get me wrong. I really enjoy what I do.
Oh, that's so obvious.
But I would really like to do it and also have a little more abundance in the old bank account. But I also acknowledge the prosperity that comes in from other sources that doesn't look like the green paper with pictures of dead presidents on it. Okay. So help me and others who maybe feel the same way to change our perspective, our outlook on what we're doing and why we don't feel like we're getting anywhere. And again, I say financially, and that's a specific area financially, because all the other areas doing great. And is there a way to flip a switch or turn a valve to open up the floodgates? Because there's this old biblical passage from the New Testament that says, cast your bread upon the water, and it'll come back 1,000-fold. It's like, I've been casting for over 40 years and I'm still waiting. So am I buying into a myth?
Oh, like when we say buying into myth, it's like as if there's myths outside of us. I mean, it's very important to realize that with everything, whether it's a relationship, whether it's health, whether it's like youth, whether it's old age, whether it's money, there are decisions that we have made early on about things, beliefs that we have created through, what happened. For example, you had a very great father who told you, no matter what, love what you do, right? I was told the opposite, for example. I was told, don't be silly, you can't just do what you love. You got to work hard and do whatever's necessary. But very early on, although I was only 8 years old hearing this, I very specifically said no to that belief system. And I said, no, I'm not accepting this belief system. My life is not going to be like that. And my life really didn't turn out that way because that's not a choice that I made. So when it comes to prosperity, the question I would ask, and this takes a little bit of introspection. It's not like something bam, bam, bam we can do here. But for you to like kind of begin exploring, what is your gain in not having more prosperity? Because if you didn't have some sort of a gain that is tied to a belief system, it would already be happening. For me, my biggest awakening, I had the exact same thing happening. Like I worked with Oliver Stone, I wrote certain things. He was like, wow, by what I wrote, da 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 da. So it's like when I was back in the days when I was, in Hollywood and doing some movie business, film business, I would get like really good feedback from whoever I worked with. So obviously I was, putting on the table something nice, something intelligent, something of value to somebody. But I always was limited when it came to finances. With my coach, what I found out is that I had a belief system I made up as a 7-year-old. It's in the book, The Story. But basically, just watching the grown-ups talk, I'm not going to get into the story. I made a decision. One can either have love or money. The two don't go together. And I'm going to choose love. I'm not going to go after the path of money. So I created a belief system as if love and money cannot go hand in hand. And that ended up controlling my life till I was 32. Another belief system I had from growing up watching Turkish movies is like, all the heroes were the good guys were the poor people, all the bad guys were always, the rich people that messed everybody else up. So as a little child, watching these movies, internally I made a decision, I'm not going to be one of the bad guys. I'm going to be one of the good guys. And the requirement for that is to say no to money. So basically, if I were to ask the same question to myself, like my mentor did to me, hey, Esra, what's your gain in not allowing more prosperity? My answer was, well, I'd rather like experience love, or I'd rather be in the good people's club. You see? So that was my gain. Now, this is all, of course, philosophical until you have an actual experience of it. So one of the exercises that if it's done right, bam, you can get there. And, maybe you should try it. And, if something cool happens, we'll talk again.
Yeah.
But you basically close your eyes. And what you do is you begin to visualize an extremely prosperous life. Actually, let's just do it now. Imagine, you get up in the morning and you don't even need to work. You only work simply because you want to, because you're just surrounded with so much prosperity. You can go wherever you want, whenever you want. You can vacation whenever you want. There's just absolutely no limitations. Or you want to buy a car? Yes, you can. You want to help the dolphins? Yes, you can. You want to construct a school? Yes, you can. Or you just want to do nothing for 30 days in Hawaii? Yes, you can. Tell me what bothers you in that picture.
And that is a question for me. And I would say that, quite honestly, nothing bothers me in that picture.
Hmm.
Because I would be able to not only have the things and do the things and go the places, but I would also be able to have the wherewithal to help the various organizations that I want to. I wish that when my best friend called me a few years back telling me he was living out of his car, I could have sent him some money to help him out. I would be able to do those kinds of things.
I would play around with this exercise a little bit
Mhm.
because, Richard, although you're saying, oh, I don't have a problem with this, trust me, when your eyes were closed, you didn't look super happy. Being put into that vision.
Oh, but I was in
So,
contemplation.
yeah, there's like aspects of it you probably, would. What if I were to say to you, yes, you can have all this money, but the one rule is that you're not allowed to help anyone? What would you say?
Oh. That would, yeah, that would be a problem.
Okay. See, and I mean, I don't want to turn this into a coaching
Sure,
session
sure,
all
sure.
the
I know,
way,
no, that's fine.
because that's not what you asked for. But you see, right there is the key of what's like lying a little beneath that about what the limitation is. Like for you, if that helping everybody isn't existing, there's a part of that prosperity coming in that's not okay. What's that not okay? Because that's exactly what the belief system is tied into.
Mm.
And that's probably what, when you say I cast, it doesn't come back. What I'm saying is, yes, we cast and it does come back if we 100% want it. If there's a part of us from a belief system of some kind that we're not even aware of that doesn't want it to come back, it won't. And it's not coming back not because anyone's limiting us or because of the economy or because of the tax people. It's not coming out back because of us.
Mm.
And it's very important to discover, because when we discover, we have the aha and we're like, oh my God, I can't believe it.
As we continue talking here with Ezra Ogut, we are going to continue talking about how money does grow on trees. Title of the book, IkeandEzraNow.com is the website. And you are listening to Tell Me Your Story. New Paradigms for a New World is our focus, and we're trying to give you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And don't worry, Ezra, I consider this program, this podcast, broadcast, videocast, my therapy. Okay? It's
Okay.
okay if we do a little session on the side. I got no problem with that. And quite honestly, I've always taken this perspective. I worked for 15 years for a Christian radio station. And that's where I learned about the law of diminishing returns and about, you don't pay me enough to. And one of the things that has been so fascinating for me in all of this is the fact that in spite of all of the stress that I have put myself through over the years in being in debt at different times, well, I'll be honest with you, in the majority of my life, but the fact is, in spite of all of the fear that I have experienced up until I'm going to say the last 10 or 15 years, okay? Because now I don't think it's just numbers, okay? It's just numbers. And I'm not going to get stressed out over that because I'm still here. I'm alive. I'm working. I'm productive. I'm earning, and so on and so on and so on and so on. But it used to be that I was so afraid, so scared of the phone calls
Mm.
until I learned through a process, and this is more of a practical thing, that all of the creditors that I had to deal with over the last 40 years, let's just say, okay, they lose nothing if I default. They have insurance. Just like I have insurance on my truck, on my personal belongings, renter's insurance, on my health, they have insurance on the fiat money that they're lending me. They don't have $5,000 in a vault somewhere that they give me every time I borrow on that card. That doesn't exist. The only time it exists is when I send them a payment. Now they have real money, but they have insurance to cover those losses. So I'm not saying that I'm going to default. I'm just saying that that diminished the stress that I had. That
Mm.
I can be responsible, but also aware of how the game is played, what the rules are. But there's another aspect of this I want to talk to you about, and that is on a grand scale, on a universal level, more spiritual and or metaphysical. The one law of the universe regarding abundance, prosperity, money is that there is a giver and a receiver. There cannot be one without the other, and that the law of the universe is there is always an exchange, but it may not appear the way you expect.
Mhm.
Talk to us about that.
Mhm. Um, I agree with that in essence, but I think but I think it's I mean, I have seen that whatever I have like given in the world, even if like let's say this person, didn't give back or didn't give me what I was owed or this or that, in another way, in another direction, it came through. For example, I'll give you an example. Um, when our publisher died, our very first publisher, he was also a very dear friend. His company was taken over by these other people, and we were owed a lot of money that we had actually left behind to the publisher for a while to help his business. So, basically, forget about not being paid. We actually allowed him not to pay us so that he could, grow his company even more. So, there we are doing something super nice. And then because he dies, other people take over. Basically, we didn't see a dime from some of our books. But because I believe in the principle you're talking about so much, instead of like stressing about it and going after it in a legal way, which is like such a headache,
Mm-hmm.
it's just not nice energy for anyone. I just sat down and I meditated and I say, universe, I know that this money belongs to me. I know that I gave it for a good purpose, and even if I hadn't helped, again, it belonged to me. And so I said, I trust this will come another way. And sure enough, about 3 months later, another publisher, a rather big publisher in Turkey, approached us. And they usually never do this in Turkey, but they decided to like upfront give us money in order to sign up with them and not with another publishing company, right? And the amount they asked, we didn't even ask for it, they already had decided the amount they were willing to give, what was the exact dollar amount that we lost in the other deal. Exactly. Not $1 more, not $1 less.
Talk about synchronicity.
Talk about synchronicity.
Yeah.
So, does that exist? Yes. But at the same time, it's very, very important in relationships, especially business relationships or any kind of relationships, to make sure that we're protecting our garden, and to make sure maybe what your friend was, or I can't remember who you said was saying that, but don't give more than you can get kind of a deal. Because when there's not a balance, an equal balance of giving and taking, it immediately drops our frequency. It's very, very important for us to protect our garden, to protect our boundaries, and make sure that what we're giving and what we're feeling we're receiving in return is equal. Otherwise, all it does is drop our frequency, and that's not good for anyone on the planet.
Mm.
And true givers are themselves have that down. When you are in that perfect flow of giving and receiving being the same, and you can manage that very well, that's when you're a true giver.
Mm. Ezra, fascinating. Money does grow on trees. I'm Richard Dugan. This is Tell Me Your Story. Ezra Agat is my guest, along with her husband. She has a website. They have a website,
My
and
husband
it
as well.
happens to be IkeandEzra.com. And we certainly hope that you are going to spend some time at IkeandEzraNow.com. That's the website. We hope that you'll go there. By the way, Ezra, we will be linked to your website so people can go there while they're
Oh,
listening or watching these interviews. And speaking of which, they are able to be listened to. Podcasts are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations. We're also on YouTube where you can watch these interviews. The YouTube channel, Tell Me Your Story. Just look for the guy with the black hat. I hope that you will do that. And also, we encourage you to listen to these programs on this fine radio station Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. for the special edition of Tell Me Your Story. I really hope that you will avail yourselves of that to find out more about what we are doing. We're trying to change the world one interview at a time, one person at a time, and the change starts with me. That's where it has to start. And so I'm going to do what I can, and I'm going to take to heart what you said earlier in our little coaching session to bring that about.
yeah, Richard, please give that some thought. Do that exercise like a little longer than we did and see
Yes,
like what bothers you. And remember, you're not allowed to help theoretically in this reality.
I will keep that in mind. I know that the one thought that I've had in terms of an abundant, continually flowing, if you will, bank account, if in this context, is the ability to go where I want to go, take the wife to dinner or what a show or what have you, without even having to think about whether or not I've got enough because I just know there's more than enough in there. Don't worry about it. You're not going nuts. You're not, putting in gold-plated faucets or things of this nature. I don't want them anyway. It's not something I'm interested in. But maybe we only have one vehicle right now. I want to get her another. I want to get her a vehicle, and I can do that because I know that there's enough in there to take care of that. Not a problem. And so forth and so on. So those are the kinds of things that I know a lot of people think about, and they get stuck a lot of the times. So before we wrap things up here, I want to ask you about that. What is the one, if there is one sticking point, one barrier, if you will, to an individual's, how do we put this, prosperity or bringing abundance into one's life, whether it's a bank account or otherwise, what would you say is the one element?
Barrier, yeah. I'm gonna say the same thing. It's like this is, I think, the starting point. It's an essential starting point for anyone struggling with this subject. Asking the self the question, why am I choosing to limit myself in this subject? Finding the why of that is super important. The second very important thing is to get out of the spender's law, meaning spending more money than you're actually receiving or living in debt. It is a must step towards prosperity to get out of the debt psychology. Very important. We cannot at the same time be in a debt state of mind and in a prosperity state of mind simultaneously. And the third thing I would say is a lot of my reality I created by kind of speaking it on a daily basis. When I was living in a very small house, 400 square feet, with a very, very, small rent. I remember the days that I would say, oh, I'm so grateful I'm living in a really beautiful house. I'm so grateful I have a pool in the backyard. And I even remember saying, oh, I'm so grateful the pool is right away, right 1, 2 steps from the bedroom. So speaking the reality you would like to experience, just like a child playing a game, until you talk yourself into that reality, you talk yourself into those feelings before it's even happened, like kind of like telling yourself a fairy tale, constantly using the word grateful. I'm grateful for that I have this, and I'm grateful for that this has happened, and I'm grateful for is extremely, extremely powerful, because at the end of the day, we are the universe individualized in actuality with no limitations than the ones that we choose to put on ourselves.
Mm.
So those are the three things I would say. Fourth thing is, it's a very powerful question, but it can be missed unless there's proper coaching beforehand. So I don't know how it's going to be received, just like, quick. But if you can see yourself as this entire universal intelligence individualized in this body, a very powerful question to ask is, who would I be being if I were already prosperous? Who would I be being?
Mm. That's a very interesting thought
Mm-hmm.
to ponder.
Mm-hmm.
Who would I be being if I were prosperous?
Yeah.
Wow. I know that a lot of people also are afraid to be prosperous because they're afraid that the prosperity will turn them into someone that they don't want to be, like the example you spoke of the good guys and the bad guys in the movies.
Yes.
And and I sit here, I have to say that in my career, I have seen a lot of individuals in my business, we all have big egos. But I do my best to try to stay humble and recognize that I didn't get here to this place talking with you, Ezra. I didn't do this all by myself. I had thousands of people help me to get here. I didn't do this on my own. We don't get where we are on our own. There are hundreds or thousands of people along our path. Starts with our family, starts with our parents bringing us into this world. And then it progresses and grows from there. So I'm very grateful to all of those people, seen and unseen, who have contributed to my success. By the way, that's one other thing I wanted to ask you about. When I go out to do a project for someone, I don't take it on in order to be successful. I
Mm.
take it on to make
Make a
that
difference.
person, if because usually it is an individual that I'm working for, to make them successful. Because if they're successful, then I'm successful. So again, trying to maintain that center of not just humility, but the reality that they're giving me this opportunity. Yes, there's an exchange. They're going to pay me for the work I'm doing, but I get the experience. When I do Audible books, for example, I get to read a book that I would not have ordinarily read and produce and so on and so forth. So that's for me. That's part of the being grateful as I go
Mm-hmm.
through my life.
Yeah, well, it sounds like with everything you do, you're a giver, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
It really is, where like your first automatic instinct is what is it that you're giving rather than what you're taking, knowing that the taking will come, will come
Right.
following what it is that you're giving, which is just a wonderful, wonderful way to go. But yes, that belief system you were talking about, many people have. Actually, there was a client in our certification program where, when we were doing the coaching to her, her big aha moment. I mean, she was making maybe, I don't know, $2,000, $3,000 a month, and she was kind of trying to survive with that. And in the coaching, she figured out her belief system, which is, she remembered being a 7-year-old, and her parents, she's in the car with her parents. Her parents are talking about a friend of theirs that won the lottery or something, like he just got a big bulk of money out of nowhere type of a situation.
Mhm.
And the conversation is, let's say his name is Tom. They're saying, look at Tom, he got the money and now he's totally lost it. Like he's leaving his wife and he's like, going off with younger girls, and he's not even like saying hi to his old friends. Oh, he's lost it. He's lost it. So there she is as an 8-year-old, exactly deciding that belief system. Oh, if I have a lot of money, I will kind of, lose it. I'll lose self-control. Now, when we think about it, like we, started the whole conversation of this money being actually, it's just a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, how can a piece of paper at all have the power to change us unless we're the one endowing that piece of paper with power
Mm-hmm.
by believing what we believe? And I really don't believe, and I haven't seen it in my career, with people who weren't so prosperous and then did become prosperous over time. Like this girl, once she figured out her belief system and she could say, oh, I don't have to be like this man. I don't have to buy into this myth that my parents were talking about in regards, to this man. I'm not going to go crazy. I'm still going to be me, even when I'm prosperous. Well, now 3 years down the line, she's about to sign a $10 million contract in 3 years by just overcoming that silly, myth that had her being controlled in regards to money all this time. So I don't see that money changes us, but it does do this. Money does amplify who we are.
Mm.
So if you're already a generous person, when you have way more money, you just become more generous.
Yeah.
If you're already like a taker and you want to, whatever, do this and that to another person because of your belief systems, when you have money, you just have more power to do that. If you're a person who gets into debt all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you get into debt with $1,000, it's no big deal. But when you're making $21 million per whatever movie, and then you get into debt, you're in debt for $21 million. So then you get talked about all over the news, so you're still the same person, except, the money has amplified you to be who you are on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
That's all it can do.
Yeah. We're talking with Esra Ogut, and we're talking about her book along with her husband, who is Ike. Ike and EsraNow.com is the website. The book, Money Does Grow on Trees. I always found that phrase. I've always loved coming across these little phrases and old wives' tales or wise sayings and so forth that I find basically are lies. One of them was, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Not true, because
Not true.
words with the right intention can do a lot of harm or they can do a lot of good. And when it comes to you can't change other people, a lie. You can. You don't do it intentionally, but by virtue of changing yourself, by virtue of learning who you are, who you really are. That means going within. I'll tell you about that in a minute. You change the people around you, because there are going to be those who are going to want to get closer to what it is that you are, who you are, and how you are. Then there are going to be others who are going, I want no part of that. Nuh-uh, no, get me the heck out of here. And they're out of Dodge in a hurry. And so you've changed them in that respect. But we don't do it in a conscious way. We don't change ourselves in order to change other people. We change ourselves, to transform, to raise our consciousness, and so forth, to be better today than we were yesterday. There's nothing wrong with who we were yesterday. It's just, as they say, there's always room for improvement. And that's kind of where we're coming from. This is Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan along with Esra Ogut, and I want to thank you so much for being with us here on the program. This is fascinating. And yes, we do want to have you back on the program to continue this conversation.
Then I'll get into coaching you.
Hey, I am open to that. I am open to that. I seriously am, because I say this somewhat facetiously, but almost truly too. I can use all the help I can get.
We all can.
But I thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, Richard, before you go, I'm so sorry. Like, it's been on my mind to say, and then we get into the conversation, I get sidetracked.
Go ahead.
You mentioned something about a podcast with my husband at the beginning. We don't have a podcast just yet.
Oh, okay.
So I don't
All right.
know, like, yeah, so that information I just want to let the listeners know, just in case I don't know who the unique one is.
Well, you are on a podcast now. It's called Tell Me Your Story. It's on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, et cetera, et cetera. There is some truth to that, but it's not your own. I understand that.
Oh, okay, okay. I
But,
wasn't sure, yeah, what you were referring to. Sorry.
but we do want to again thank you. But I have three final questions. I ask all of
Three.
three that I ask all of my guests at the end of the program. And before I ask you those three questions, I need to say to you, the listener and the viewer, thank you for watching and listening to Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world, as we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. for the special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We're podcasting at SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Amazon Music, as well as iHeartRadio. And we are also on YouTube, where you can watch these interviews on the Tell Me Your Story channel. And we hope that you'll subscribe to either or both the podcast and the video cast. And we also ask that if you are led to do so and you want to support the work that we're doing, you want to be a part of what we are doing with this program by bringing these new ideas, these, as I say, choices and knowledge of those choices, and you'd like to support us financially, we would be very grateful. We have a PayPal account for your security as well as ours. Any amount is welcome. All you have to do is go and say, I want to send X number of dollars to, and my email address, richard@richarddugan.com. And one area we did not get into, and this is one of the reasons we're going to have you back, we hope that you folks will participate in the Decade of Perfect Vision, the 2020s, where we encourage you to go within, to spend time in that quiet, still, calm, peaceful place where you can listen to and hear that still small voice, giving you the guidance and the instruction, the encouragement that only for you it is given. That information is for you and you alone, and to get to know who you really are deep down inside. Yes, both the shadow and the light side, because it is all of that that makes up who you are. And it's so important. And it can be a little scary to do that, to get to know the shadow side, to become aware of some of the darker aspects of who we are. But I tell you what, once you've done it, you don't have to go back and do it again. You're sort of free from that particular thing. But it's so important. It really is, folks. So I hope that you will do that. And with all of that being said, now we go to our guest, the author of Money Does Grow on Trees, and question one of the three. Who is Esra Ogut?
The universe individualized, having an experience in the here and now with some perfection and some limitation.
What is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you are doing now?
Oh, for people to wake up to how incredibly powerful and amazing each and every one of us is.
And finally, what is your life's purpose?
My life's purpose is to discover myself out of the limitations and remember who I really am.
And with that, again, we thank you for giving us so much time, sharing the work that you are doing at the website IkeandEzraNow.com. And we do look forward to having you back again to continue this conversation, especially to talk about the role of our intuition when it comes to our prosperity. So thank you so much.
Can't wait. Richard, thank you so much. You've been such a great host. It was an absolute pleasure and just so much fun talking to you. Can't wait to do it again.
Same here. And I thank you for listening and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast videocast, Love to Lol.